things that we do before we engage with any organization is what we call a competency survey. So it's a tool that we've designed in an online format that we get folks to complete before we engage in the organization, and we've managed to, over the course of the past 3 years or so, gather some useful insights into the particular challenges that organizations and individuals face within the context of specifically business negotiation. So what I'm going to share with you today are some key highlights from the research study that we've been conducting. In total, we've had responses probably from over 1,000 people in the context of the survey. What we've done is we've narrowed that down to middle management level, which gave us a view of about 550 odd responses. What was really interesting, one of the first points that we discovered is that just about 50%, it was 49.8% or something, of all folks that we surveyed never participated in any previous negotiation training, which was kind of interesting. So half of people out there have not had the opportunity to participate in any kind of formal skills enhancement. What was even more interesting is that Harvard University, with their project on negotiation, are regarded probably as the preeminent source of knowledge and research around negotiation in the world, and only 7% of folks whom we interacted with had ever heard of the Harvard method. 50% of folks, this was quite interesting because it's in keeping with the fact that just about half of folks didn't have any previous training. 50% of folks had not even read a book on negotiation. 63% of folks told us that within their organization they'd not identified any best practices surrounding negotiation. Now it's very interesting, there's another study that was done in the States by Max Bazerman, where they found that within the context of sales processes and sales strategy, just about 99% of organizations have defined a set of best practices around sales, right? And they've done similar things around purchasing. You'll be aware of all the supply chain optimization initiatives out there, Six Sigma, total quality management, all those kind of things. So particularly around the supply chain environment, there's been a huge amount of focus around establishing best practices. So what's really interesting here from an investment perspective for organizations is that if you want to obtain competitive differentiation, investing in yet another sales improvement initiative or another purchasing improvement initiative is clearly not going to provide you with the best return on investment. Investing in an area such as this is likely to give you far better return on your investment because you're not doing what your competitors are already doing, right? So it's easier to create differentiation. Now, this particular one here is very interesting. What it tells us is that 79% of folks told us that if they were to compare the amount of time spent in preparation for negotiations as a ratio to the time spent in negotiation, they would say that 79% of folks spend less than 60% as much time preparing as they engage in negotiation, right? So just to say that again. So in other words, if I'm gonna spend let's say 10 hours in a negotiation, it would mean that I spent only 6 hours preparing for that 10 hours. Okay, so this is what we're saying. So that's quite interesting, right? Because if you think of the environment of professional sports or some other analogies that we can use, clearly folks spend vastly more time preparing than they do actually engaging within that environment. So certainly there's a huge opportunity there, I think, for improvement. Then another fairly high percentage, 71% of folks told us that they actually do no formal concession planning, right? So it tells us folks go into negotiations kind of making trades without having thought about the relative importance of things, to themselves, to their counterparty. So if you will, a huge focus on tactical negotiation rather than strategic negotiation that we see as a consequence of that particular item. Probably one of the most interesting things that we see is that 89% of folks tell us that they have no structured review process within the organization. Now, there's a huge opportunity here, I think. What this tells us, first and foremost, is that folks are not learning from their experience. Okay, so what they're not doing is they're not, you know, in many ways, this ties in to the fact that they have no best practices. It's very difficult to develop these, of course, if you don't do that. Okay, so key element, you know, one of the best ways to give execution to you know, creating a learning environment around our experience is to create a knowledge base. So to make sure that, you know, we have certain basic information, at least, that we populate in the knowledge base that can equip us better for our negotiations moving forward. Okay, some of the more interesting responses I thought I'd plot on a graph here of the respondents. Those asked whether, you know, they could tell us what presented them with the biggest challenge in the context of the organizational component of their negotiation. So if you will, at a company level rather than an individual level. No surprise that folks told us that their biggest challenge is the price-value trade-off, right? This is kind of one of those where you think, okay, it's probably what you'd expect to see, you know, before you do the survey. There are one or two surprising ones, though, however. Folks tell us, more than 40% of folks told us that it's really difficult for them to deal with complexity in the context of negotiation. So folks feel much more confident, you know, in a transactional style. So if it's a, you know, simple issue and, you know, one counterparty, but the minute you're looking at, you know, multiple issues, multiple parties, multiple time periods, folks feel, you know, that, you know, they could benefit from some structure around that to assist them in understanding that complexity. This is an interesting thing. Of course, the minute we don't understand somebody else, what do? We categorize them as being irrational, right? Okay, so it's very interesting to see that folks think that, you know, the counterparties are behaving irrationally. So what this tells us is that, you know, the communication that takes place between the counterparties is not done in a way that would advance, you know, the easy understanding of our respective positions in the context of negotiation. And then the last one, I think I alluded to that but earlier as well when I spoke about complex negotiations. Folks tell us that they lack structure. You know, so there's no consistent way of preparing and applying, you know, what we know that works in the context of negotiation.